Hi everybody, welcome to Therapeutic Tools of the Trade, our Friday night live stream. So unbelievably, I actually have plans tomorrow as well. I've become a social butterfly the last couple of weeks. So I'm doing the live stream tonight, although the poll on our little Facebook group would seem to suggest that normally a Saturday night is good for the live videos. So normally I will be trying to do the videos between 6 and 7 p.m. on a Saturday night, our Saturday night live videos, but occasionally I might do a Friday night one, and you never know, I might just pop up at random times as well if something occurs to me or there's something I get too excited about and that I just have to share. So tonight's video is going to be based on continuing professional development requirements. I know it's not a particularly exciting topic, but it's a very useful and very relevant and potentially very stress reducing, anxiety reducing topic, especially given it's this time of year. Normally this is when, you know, the psychs that I supervise or that might be working with us start to go, oh, there's a month left and I'm lots of hours behind on my CPD, help, I need lots of PD. And this video is all about, if that's you right now, that's fine, that happens. Perhaps this might help make up some of those hours now, but it's also about getting you into the best place possible for next year so that you don't have to hit this kind of November wall again. I think everybody at the moment in the group are psychologists. There may be a couple of counsellors among you, I'm not sure. So just to make it clear from the start, the PD requirements that I'm talking about in this live stream are based on the APRA requirements for psychologists. So ACA has different requirements. The Social Working Association has different requirements. Check what is actually required for your professional body. Don't just go off this. And even for the psychologists, read the guidelines yourself. You don't have to take my word for it, that's for sure. But this is based on my interpretation, my reading, and what I talk about with my supervisees in terms of what they need to reach the APRA requirements for CPD. So I thought I'll do just a sort of a brief overview of what's required for psychs in terms of our CPD, and then we'll talk about a few different ways to help manage that. So the most important thing is to remember that you don't want to be doing this in a vacuum. That part of the requirement is that you have a learning plan in place, and that's something that I know often isn't a huge priority for a lot of psychs, which I get. We have a lot of things vying for our time and attention, but developing a learning plan for our ongoing professional development is not usually high on that list. But it is an important part of the CPD, and you need to, if you were audited, you need to be able to say, this is why I did this particular training, because it fits in with my learning goals in this particular way. So yeah, coming up with the learning plan in the first place is really, really important. Then coming up with how am I going to split it up? So if you have areas of practice endorsement, you have to take that into consideration. Out of your 30 hours of CPD, about half of them, so 16 hours, have to be related to your area of endorsement. If you're doing the registrar program, the requirements are slightly different. If you don't have an area of endorsement, but you're a supervisor, for example, then you've got to demonstrate board-approved supervisor-related learning and all of these kind of things. So make sure that you're doing the right type of supervision for your particular title, I suppose. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's dinner time for some of the dogs, and it sounds like someone broke their boundary and tried to get to dinner early. Okay, so you need 30 hours a year. So from the 1st of December to the 30th of November, it's 30 hours a year. 10 of those hours are peer consultation. So this is where supervision comes into it, either one-on-one or in group settings. Remember, if it's in group settings, you can only count as peer consultation that time where you're talking about your cases or information related to your cases. So for example, if we do a group supervision session, I usually try and ask people to think about a particular case where what we're talking about can be applied to. So even if we'll say I'm talking about a particular case, I'm counting that as my peer supervision, my peer consultation hours, then someone else in the group might be able to chime in with, well, actually that's related to my case in such and such a way, and they get to include those hours as part of their peer consultation hours as well. When we are doing these things in the group, this can't be considered peer consultation because, especially like now, there's no one joining me on the live stream, so you don't have time, or you don't have the ability, the chance to come back at me with questions or talk about how this might be related to a particular clinical case for you. You can, however, count this as your other PD. So you've got 20 hours of other PD to make up each year. This type of stuff goes towards that total. This is learning to help extend your professional development. This is PD. So make sure you record things like this. If you're watching a video that someone's doing that's talking about a particular strategy or a particular tool, if you do some reading, if you do any type of learning on that is directly related to your work, that's PD. Excuse me. There you go. That's a first. My apologies. Okay. Any type of PD, any type of learning that's related to your work, that is PD. Just make sure that you record it, which is what we're going to get into a little bit now. How can you keep track of those things, especially things like this that are just sort of short bursts of PD almost. Most of these videos are 10, 20 minutes long. How do you record that and make that accountable for PD? Because at the end of the day, yes, there are all these educational reasons why PD is really important. There are all of these clinical reasons why PD is really important. All the research suggests that clients with the best outcomes tend to be seeing psychs and clinicians who are getting their own support. There were fewer complaints or ethical breaches or issues around misconduct with clinicians who are getting regular PD, peer consultation, and learning. So there are really good outcomes for doing regular PD for your own brain and your own learning, for your clients and for your practice. But at the end of the day, when it comes to this time of year, most people are more worried about making the registration requirements to keep AHPRA happy than they are worried about the other stuff. Most people, not all people, but most people at this point, it becomes, have I done enough hours, rather than what was the quality of those hours. So there's two things that I wanted to talk about tonight. One was reducing a bit of that, making it more about getting something really positive out of your PD, something that's going to make you feel happy and engaged and give you that little bit of that recharge that we sometimes need, especially if you've been working with long-term clients and you feel like you can stagnate, you can get a bit stale. So at this time of year is the perfect time to sit down and think about, what do I want next year's PD to look like? What do I want next year's to focus on? And one of the really good ways of doing that is using your clinical framework. So for those of you who weren't at the initial PD that launched Therapeutic Tools of the Trade, I don't think we've gone into therapeutic framework in detail yet. That's something I might do at a later live stream. But basically, your therapeutic framework is your modalities and your theory specific learning, so whether that's CBT or schema or mindfulness-based CBT or ACT or whatever it might be. And then there's your overarching framework, the learning and the kind of, if you like, the big theme theories that underpin your work. So for me, I am all about neurobiology and attachment, and that fits really nicely with my animal assisted work, which is one of my specific modalities. But anything that I do with a client, I'm linking back to what is this doing on the neurological level? What is this doing? How is this working? How is this behavior that I'm seeing linked to what's happening on the brain level and where that came from originally? So that's my framework. My overarching framework tends to be that neurobiology attachment focus. So my PD, I need that to be linked to there in some way. So for example, I just did a 5-day training in Daylesford that was the neurobiology of animal assisted therapy. Like, you can't get much more on theme than that. So that was a no-brainer. That was why knowing your framework can make your PD planning so much easier. Because the second I saw that, I'm like, well, there you go. that's perfect. And then in the training, when I read a little bit more about it, they were talking a lot about developmental trauma and how attachment-based work was going to come into it. So that was, well, okay, if I do nothing else all year, I have to do that one. And it's 5 days, it's a big commitment, but I know this is going to be in line with my therapeutic framework. So this is what I mean about spending some time doing that clinician framework, getting an idea of your therapeutic framework, and then looking at PD ahead for the year and looking at what's going to fit. It's so easy to kind of go, oh, that looks good, I want to do this. Oh, that looks good, I want to do this. And you can end up getting pulled in 20 different directions, and you can do some really interesting and really useful and fun PD. But, hey Matt, but it's not necessarily going to be in line with the therapeutic framework, and it can actually end up being a little bit of a waste of time, because if it's not in line with your therapeutic framework, you're probably not going to apply it. You're going to do the training, you're going to read some of the coursework, and you're going to go, yep, that's great, that's really interesting, and you're probably not going to apply it. Whereas if you go to a training that you know is in line with your therapeutic framework, you're much more likely to be able to pick out bits and pieces and start using straight away, which we all know you need to do. If you don't start applying it in the first couple of weeks from the training, you're not going to. So finding things that are in line with your therapeutic framework and concentrating your PD and your learning plan around that. So for example, last year, part of my learning plan was about extending a little bit my knowledge of precisely what mechanisms are going on in animal assisted therapy, because I know it works, I see it works, and I could guess, and I could sort of extrapolate how the effects that I was seeing in the room might be linked to what's happening neurologically, but I didn't know. So I went looking for animal assisted therapy that was going to focus on what's happening at the brain level. And I found it, and it was great, and it was really useful, and I've started applying it in my sessions now. I've started using it in the PD that I'm going to run in December, because it was spot on with my therapeutic framework, how I work clinically, and it was really worth the time and the effort and the money. So have a think about your therapeutic framework. What's going to not only excite you and get you interested, but what are you going to be able to use? What are you going to be able to start applying? So that's the idea of looking forward, looking into next year, taking out the days now. So with this 5-day training, I booked this out months in advance, and I made sure I took the following day off as well, because I knew after 5 straight days of training in Daylesford, I was going to be exhausted and my brain was going to explode. So I made sure I not only blocked those 5 days out, but the next day as well. So planning ahead like that, looking ahead and going, that's going to be good PD, that's going to be good PD, and now how can I organise my time around it? Makes it just a little bit more palatable and easier to manage. And since Matt has joined me, I will let you know Rory's in here with me. She snuck in. So planning your PD in advance. first step to reducing the headache of November PD time and reducing the anxiety around November PD time. Second step is having a reliable way to record and manage your PD so you know what you're actually up to. There are lots of ways to do this. So APS has online logbooks, APRA has templates you can download, you can completely just come up with your own Word or Excel document that's going to record it. I always found the problem with those was remembering to do it. So when you're sitting in the PD and you're taking notes or whatever it might be, I can have all the best intentions of the world. Yep, I'm going to go home, I'm going to record this, and I never really did. And if I was ever audited, as happened to a colleague of mine, it would have been a nightmare having to go back. So remember, if you're audited, you've got 28 days to produce your logbooks and your reflections. And that would have been a nightmare. So when my colleague was audited and she had the 28 days, she pretty much did nothing else but go through, try and find certificates and have to come up with reflections on PD that she'd done, you know, because it was like 2 years ago that they audited. And she had to go through and come up with all of these reflections of training that she'd done 2 years ago. And you can imagine how difficult that was. And at the end, she had a pile of papers like this thick that was the logbook and the reflections and all of this kind of thing. And she was fine and it all passed, but it was a rough month for her. So the way that I have been doing it this last 2 years is using an app, because we use our phones all the time. If you're at the PD event, if you're sitting in front of the TV, hi Kylie, if you're sitting in front of the TV doing a reading, if you're pretty much anytime you're in a position to do PD, you're probably going to have your phone with you. So an app made a lot of sense to me, and it has been such a useful addition to the CPD logging. I cannot tell you. I don't get an endorsement or anything from this app. It just so happens to be the one that I found and that I really like. And I thought I would introduce it to you guys as well. So this is its little symbol. So it's OzMed CPD, and there's an app and a website, and you can use both or just one. But the really, really nice thing is it makes logging the PD so easy. It literally takes you through step by step. So since I'm using my phone to do the live stream, I thought I'd bring it up on the iPad. So really hoping there's nothing on here that, well, no one steal my identity, please. So it just, so it just comes up. That's the home page, and it gives you an idea of what you've done, how many hours you've done, how many hours you've got left to do. Oh, thanks, Kylie. That's very kind of you. This is one, I changed my account mid-year. So this is the one I was kind of halfway through and then I changed my account. But all you have to do is hit the little plus button. That's really hard to do backwards. And it asks you what type of PD are you documenting? Peer consultation, reading, online. And I should say, when you set this up initially, it asks you about if you're a psychologist, if you've got endorsement, if you're a counsellor. It asks you and then tailors what you have to enter to your particular field, which is also really handy. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing because trying to enter it on the iPad is quite tricky. Entering it on the phone or the laptop, really easy, but I'm terrible at typing on the iPad. So I'll just tell you what it helps you to log. So you go in, what type of learning was it? Was it online? Was it peer consultation? Was it CPD, reading, whatever it might be? I should note as well, there's a lot of confusion about active CPD versus, I suppose, passive or inactive CPD. Active CPD is optional. So it's great if the learning gives you some sort of chance to write about it or give an oral presentation, because just in terms of our learning, often that helps to cement things for us. But you don't have to have a certain number or percentage hours of active CPD anymore. Now it's just, it's optional. As long as you can demonstrate the learning and the reflection, which the AusMed CPD app really has helped me to do. So you put in the type of learning, you put in the description. So most recently, I had an individual supervision session. So I just put individual supervision, the date, who provided it, what was the purpose or what was discussed, who attended. If it was a group supervision, you can put in if there were other people in attendance. Then it's got a section where you can upload evidence. So you can, in this case, I uploaded the receipt that I paid to the supervisor as my evidence that I had actually attended that supervision. If it's a face-to-face PD and you get an attendance certificate, that's where you can upload it, and it keeps it all there for you. If you were ever audited and you needed to show that, all you have to do is hit a button that says download report, and it prints it all out for you. It either prints it out or saves it as a PDF. So you can either email it to APRA or send it in printed out. It's so easy. If you're doing other PD, so not just peer consultation, it also prompts you to do reflections. So when I prepared earlier, because I don't know about you, but sometimes the reflection bit can make me feel a little bit like, no, I can't say that on a live stream. It can feel a bit strange. It can feel a bit forced is probably a good way of putting it. But this gives you lots of prompts that helps put things into a bit of order. So an online thing that I did, I did not type that much. A lot of that is pre-filled for you. So it gives you prompts such as this online learning provided me with, and then it gives you a drop-down box, and you can say it provided me with new knowledge, it provided me with a confirmation of things I was already doing. It's quite a long list. It was directly relevant to my scope as, and then you can, again, you've just fill in as a clinical psychologist, as a supervisor, as a psychologist, as a whatever it might be. I undertook this activity to learn, and then again, it gives you lots of prompts. So you can say, I undertook this activity to learn how to better engage with clients, or I undertook this activity to, what did I put on this one? To better learn how to apply the theories to practice. Then it asks, are you likely to make changes to your clinical practice based on this? So it gives you those prompts all the way through. And as you're answering yes or no, I think the longest part that I actually typed was, this is directly transferable to my work, but I can also, this is directly transferable to my clinical work, but I can also apply it to my supervision work. And that was the most that I actually typed. It's so easy. It's so easy. And it does give you that really nice little summary. You can keep track of the hours. It's so handy. I love it. There may be other apps out. Well, of course, there are other apps out there. If you know of another one that's doing the same thing, brilliant. But that one's free. There is a pro version that you can get that then also gives you access to videos and things like that. But even the free version gives you access to readings in all sorts of very diverse areas, because it's not just for psychologists, it's for doctors and other allied health professionals. There's all sorts of interesting readings. You do have to be careful sometimes. I fell down a rabbit hole one night and ended up reading about obstetric complications, but it was still interesting. Okay, so come up with your plan. Come up with your learning plan for 2020, if you can believe it. What's in line with your therapeutic framework? What kind of PDs do you want to search out? And talk to other people. Talk to people in this group. If you're not already a member of a group supervision or peer consultation group, get involved and find out what other kind of things are out there. and plan ahead for what's going to be in line with your therapeutic framework, what's going to get you excited and interested to do it rather than just ticking an APRA box. And then find a simple, easy, reliable way of recording your PD. And I promise that will be the end of the November PD anxiety cycle. Thank you very much for joining me live tonight, Kylie and Matthew. And to everybody else, I hope you have a very, very good weekend, full of lots of exciting PD planning. And I will talk to you all next week.